Now joining us is a very special guest, Super Grandmaster Fabiano Caruana, reigning U.S. champion. We had Nazi on the show a few times, so of course we couldn't stop there. We had to have the reigning men's or the Open U.S. champion as well. Fabiano, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, one of the special treats we're going to give the viewers is that even though we are forbidden from doing live broadcasts during the game, what you don't know is that Fabiano and I have been here looking at the live position together, and we're actually going to analyze the position that is live during this recording while Fabiano is joining us to give his insight and thoughts into where he thinks the game is headed. So the fun thing is then we get to review it later and see if Fabiano could accurately predict the general direction of the game. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Fabi. What's going on in this position? How good are Carlsen's winning chances? And what are your feelings about Karjakin's last move, the ultra-aggressive G4?
Yeah, G4 does change the position, and it can change it in several ways because he does allow the option to create a protected pass pawn with F4. And I think G4 in general signifies that he thought the position probably was not holdable if he was just waiting around, and he wanted to kind of close the position a bit more, because if black plays F4, it does close it. If black takes on G4, which is also an option, then it simplifies the position somewhat and gives white's knight a bit more room to maneuver around and, you know, create annoying threats.
Right.
My first instinct, well, I guess black wouldn't want to take, but would probably play something like bishop D5 or bishop E6 to force white to take and then to recapture with the king. My first instinct is that, I mean, I would first consider F4 and see if it's possible to break through after. I guess white will probably put the bishop on like C5, D4, get the bishop on that diagonal to kind of limit black's. I mean, if black gets bishop B6, bishop B3, it's probably going to collapse. So probably bishop C5 comes, and then black will play bishop D5, probably bishop C7, and maybe try to get F3 in.
So you're saying here bishop C5, bishop D5, and then
yeah. Now white has to wait.
Okay.
I mean, white has to wait with like bishop D4, and then black has to find a plan to win. And
okay.
I would consider stuff like bishop C7, F3, and trying to get the bishop to F4 to attack C1. But it won't be easy to win this. It's very closed off, and white does have a sort of dark square blockade. And there's no chances of zugzwang because the bishop has unlimited squares on that diagonal.
So does that mean your suggestion might be that Magnus should maintain the tension then, maybe with one of your other suggestions like bishop D5 inviting the king to come forward?
Yeah, either maybe bishop B6, bishop D5, bishop E6, one of those moves. Because I do have a feeling that if, let's say, white takes and then king takes, after bishop E6, GF5, king F5, and now the bishop is coming to H5, and these two bishops are very strong.
Absolutely.
And knight is dominated. So maybe white should not take and should make another waiting move. But if let's say I calculated F4 and didn't find a way to break through, then I would probably play a move like this and wait for white to show the defensive idea that he has.
And sit on the nut to crack, though obviously you've been following the match just like everybody else. Karjakin hasn't cracked yet, right? Were you impressed with his defensive technique yesterday, or maybe less impressed with Magnus's inability to find the winning setup? How did you feel about that?
Well, the interesting thing is that we were, I mean, when I say we, all the players of the tournament that I just finished, so Vichy, Topalov, Hikaru, and the commentators, Yasser, Alejandro, Tanya, everyone was at a restaurant. We were all discussing the ending because we were looking at it without an engine, trying to figure it out, and it was very complicated. And we more or less kind of predicted this piece sacrifice before he played it, and we were trying to work out if it would be a draw. First we said it's probably enough to hold, then we thought no, it's losing. And I think that in general it shows that it was a difficult winning task for Magnus.
Right.
He could have won it. It was objectively winning, but it was difficult, and Karjakin did defend well. On the other hand, he didn't have to allow any of this from the opening. I mean, he did have a solid position, and he shouldn't have wandered off into a losing one.
And then on that note, I mean, and that's interesting. I wonder how many words did you get in edgewise, or was it mainly Yaz talking?
Yasser didn't give too much input about the position.
That's a surprise, but I'll
I think he's, after 5 long days of talking about chess, he just wants
Right.
to take a
He was
back
letting
seat.
he was letting the players run the room, which is a rare show for Yaz. But I'll leave those jokes for another time. But that's a cool story, and that's the kind of insight we get when we have someone like the reigning U.S. champion on the show. But Fabiano, back to this position. Then you touched on the fact that Karjakin really didn't have to allow those chances. He started lashing out at a certain point, this aggressive C5 move, and then, as you said, it led to this eventual, okay, maybe bishop g5 was a blunder, allowing the rook e4 idea, but do you feel like he was defending aggressively rather than just sort of sitting tight, and that's really what gave Carlsen those chances? And do you see a move like g4 in today's game maybe being the same thing? Did he really have to play this aggressively?
I think it's a similar sort of situation for him, because in both cases, like yesterday, he was basically in a passive position, where he had to kind of wait and deal with threats one by one. Like, White had the idea
Right.
to put rook on g5, and he could have played like bishop h6 and things like that. And here, it's a bit different, because here he's much worse than he was yesterday. I mean,
Right.
his position might objectively be losing with or without g4, or at least practically it might be very difficult to hold. But it is a similar situation where you have to decide if you want to create or change a position in some way, or just wait around and for your opponent to show how to win. But I think he's motivated by the fact that he probably didn't see an answer to like king f6. King goes back to f6, bishop comes to h5, bishop goes to b6, and the bishops kind of create threats. And at some point, White just can't hold everything together.
So what's your advice on that? I mean, you're touching on some really awesome psychological points we can't get from you very often. One of the first things you said was that G4 in your mind was probably a sign that Karjakin felt like he might be lost, or at least objectively doesn't feel like he can continue to sit on the position. And is that generally what strong players want to do when they're under the gun? If they don't feel they can hold from a practical perspective, if nothing else, it makes sense to kind of mix it up.
I think that it's in general very difficult to wait around. It feels better, like let's say if a position is losing, it feels better to create counterplay and see how if that brings you any luck, rather than just wait around for your opponent to show whatever
Right.
winning method he has. And this type of position reminds me of a game that I once had against Nakamura, where I was fighting against the two bishops. I think that one I had more drawing chances, and I waited around there, and it didn't work out for me. And I think that might be the experience, because very often you have positions like this where you're fighting against the two bishops in an endgame. And the general feeling I have is that waiting around usually doesn't work out, that the bishops somehow manage to break through, create threats here and there, and then things collapse. So maybe Karjakin has the same feeling, and that's why he tried to create some sort of... I mean, g4 is logical, because it either aims to create a fortress after f4, or to simplify the position in some way, which, I mean, generally might offer better drawing chances. It's still debatable, because then Black has a passed g-pawn and the king gets into the game, but maybe his feeling is that with less pawns on the board, he has more chances to make a draw.
Well, phenomenal insight, and I wish we could keep you all day. I wish we could do live commentary, and I wanted to back up in the game and talk about some of the earlier mistakes that Sergey made that sort of led to this tough situation. But I don't think we're going to have time to do too many of them. So I'm just going to go to the one critical moment and ask you, where do you feel Karjakin's biggest mistake was in this game that gave? I mean, this is a big deal, right? If Magnus Carlsen wins this game in the championship with Black, objectively, it's never over till it's over. But I think you and I and most would agree that the match is clearly headed, totally the wrong direction if Carlsen is winning games with Black, right? So where do you feel Karjakin went wrong in this game to give up such a big advantage with White?
Well, I think it was interesting from the opening, because Karjakin played h3, which is, or was a main line. I played it myself, but it's sort of considered good for Black because of this bishop b7, d3, d5 stuff. There were some games like even Shuka and So,
But Magnus didn't play d5, right? He went for the more solid line.
Which I wasn't really surprised by, because this is Magnus's general approach in openings to get a sort of position, and this is a position which you can just play. Like, you can play queen d7, knight d8, knight d6. It's a very typical sort of Spanish position where you have like unlimited... Okay, he played queen d7, he didn't play knight d8, he played rook e8, bishop f8. My first thing I thought was questionable was knight 3 to h2, because that allowed
Okay.
d5.
So that's in this position here.
So I mean, I don't know. I think in general it's not a position where white can hope for very much, but after allowing d5, it seemed just very comfortable for black. And I think that Magnus's next few moves were very strong, taking knight a5. Knight a5, taking knight c4 was an excellent idea, and with the idea that h6 is hanging, but it doesn't cause black too many problems. And after bishop h6, my first instinct was this is a bad move to give up the e pawn, and I thought that maybe knight g4 would lead to equality instead. But yeah, I mean here
instead of bishop takes h6, this move.
yeah, I was thinking knight g4, then black should take on g4, hg. I thought that hg instead of queen g, but I mean maybe. And this position, I thought that white can probably equalize, but I think it's clear already that black is the one playing for something rather than white. And bishop h6, queen c6, I already felt like black is pressing. The computer says that white is completely equal after bishop c1, but I think it's strange to just give up a central pawn like that.
Yeah, and it certainly, Sergey felt that way because he, for those watching the live game, spent, I think, almost 20 minutes on this position before not playing the computer move, but actually playing a move that instantly just made it clear that the direction was headed in black's favor, right?
Yeah, no, I think that bishop c4 is anyway a bad move.
Yes.
Even if you don't like your position, you still shouldn't just allow this pawn on b2 because it's going to be weak for the rest of the game, and it's very clearly an unpleasant position after this.
All right, well, and then after that, the e-pawn fell anyway, as you said, and it seemed like we were headed toward a position that, like yesterday, Magnus is playing for 2 results. Karjakin is officially only trying to draw this kind of position, and again, as I said, I'm not going to make you go through all of it because we know we were headed toward that game where you just spent a lot of effort and gave us awesome opinions on the live position. So we'll get to see if Fabiano's right when we are premiering this ChessCenter live, but before I let you go, I do have one more question.
Sure.
And it's just one that the fans are, I think, would want to know. So there are many players of your level and your peers, of course, have the dreams of playing for the World Chess Championship, and maybe some of them think they're good enough, some of them aren't. But you, I think, are a special case to ask this question to because you literally came less than a half a point almost from playing for the World Championship yourself instead of Sergey Karjakin. Obviously, the candidates tournament, though you eventually lost that last game, you were right there and with the opportunity to win. So do you watch this match with a little bit of a bittersweet disappointment that you're not there? And the follow-up question is, what do you think your feelings are for the future? How motivated are you to become the World Chess Champion someday?
Well, I don't view the candidates so much as something which I should have won, because although I did have a very clear chance near the end, I mean, I had winning positions against Topalov and against Fiedler, and if I had won one of those 2 games and just made a draw in the last round, I would have won the candidates. But the way I view it, I also had, I mean, I think it's kind of silly to look at just like the last 3 games of the tournament and forget about my losing positions against like Geary and Fiedler, and I mean, I had some very near, some very close shaves there as well. And that is just the nature of the tournament, that you're going to lose half points or full points, and you're going to save some bad positions or win some bad positions. And I still just watch the match with interest because these are 2 extremely strong and resourceful and great players who are playing. And it's interesting to follow the match. So although I would prefer to be playing it, I'm still happy to see a good match taking place.
Well, that's an amazingly, I think, fresh perspective and a very classy outlook to not look at that as a tournament that, or at least not to have those regrets. So that's a good outlook. But you didn't answer the second part of my question. How ambitious are you to become the World Chess Champion someday?
I think I have good chances. I mean, I think I'm still improving, and I'll have many chances to play the candidates in the future, or at least I hope I will, and I hope that I'll be able to win it as well. I think I was close once, so it shows that I can get close again, and hopefully take my chance next time. And okay, after that, it still comes down to beating the world champion in a match, and that's never going to be easy. But if I get there, then, I mean, if I get to the match, then I think I'll have my chances to win, and and become world champion.
Awesome stuff, and thank you. I know you weren't expecting that question from me to end the show, but your analysis and insights have been amazing. We are more than thankful for you joining us, and we look forward to you playing in a World Chess Championship match at some point in your career. Thank you, Fabiano, and we will hopefully see you on another Chess Center in the future.
Thanks, Danny.